I am so pleased to be joined by former FBI general counsel and senior member of Robert Mueller's special counsel team that investigated the Russian interference in the 2016 election, the great Andrew Weissmann. Thanks for being here tonight.
So great to be here.
I had to, just pick my jaw up off the floor after reading this piece. What was your initial reaction to this?
Well, first, I reacted to it in terms of the journalism.
Yeah.
This is the A-plus team at the New York Times. It is, if people have not read it, they really need to. It's beautifully sourced and beautifully written. And you know if it's this team, they will have kicked all of the tires. So that was my first reaction. I wasn't surprised to read about Barr. I, in part, lived through his actions, and we were the victims of his actions. So that didn't surprise me. To me, it was more of the same on that. I was surprised by the various revelations, the fact that there were not one but three prosecutors who resigned, the reasons for their resignations, which you surmised but did not know. And then, as you pointed out, the Italy piece was beyond shocking, and that the sort of leaving it out there that this was really wrongdoing that was being investigated related to the FBI when it was actually Donald Trump, and then to give it to Durham with no sort of public disclosure about this is just a sign of what the House Republicans call the weaponization of the Department of Justice. I mean, are they going to look at this? I mean, this entire article is Exhibit A to how the Department of Justice was weaponized by Bill Barr and Donald Trump. And they saw no separation between the political sphere and the Department of Justice. And for whatever you can say about Merrick Garland, that is not his fault. I mean, he is independent. So this is a really good example of exactly what can go wrong when the Department of Justice is weaponized, which is something that happened in the prior administration. There's no evidence that's happening now.
To go back to what you're talking about, for those who don't recall, there was a moment when it became clear that there was a criminal investigation happening in the context of this Durham probe. As we find out today in the New York Times, the criminal investigation wasn't into the intelligence community or agents, it was into Donald Trump. And yet when the news broke about just the criminal aspect of all this, most people thought that meant that there had been wrongdoing at one of the agencies. And Bill Barr chose to not clear that up.
Well, absolutely, because we all knew what the purview was for John Durham. So that if John Durham was looking at it, you knew it had to be within that scope. And he did nothing to correct that. And do you really, sitting here, think that John Durham and Bill Barr did a thorough assessment of that? It's not like they looked for it. This was the Italian government, according to the reporting, that gave them this tip. And it was apparently so convincing that they couldn't ignore it. But does anyone really think that this was investigated thoroughly? I mean, when I was at the Mueller investigation, we would have loved to have that information.
You're like, I know some investigators who would have used that.
Exactly.
That stuff. Are we ever going to find, I mean, first of all, the Durham probe is not over yet. I mean, are we ever going to find out what that criminal investigation was? Is there someone else at the DOJ who could take it over? I mean, given the fact that these guys were so reluctant to do anything that was damaging to Trump, the fact that they felt it was necessary to investigate this suggests that it's something fairly significant in the way of criminal wrongdoing. Yeah,
so it doesn't fit within any of this, the multiple special counsels that we currently have. Stay tuned. There could be more, but right now it doesn't fit within the purview of what Jack Smith has or Rob Hur. But you can imagine that with this reporting that Merrick Garland or Lisa Monaco are going to be really curious if they don't know already. And there's a good chance they don't, because, John Durham would have had to have told them about this and laid out all the facts. Now, maybe he did. But if he didn't, they're going to look at this and decide whether it's something that needs to be pursued and whether, for instance, the scope of what Jack Smith is supposed to look at gets folded into that.
This is the danger of appointing a special counsel, right?
Exactly.
You seem sort of sanguine about Bill Barr and the politicization of the DOJ under his stewardship. I was still shocked by it. I mean, it was out there to be seen, but the idea that he's back there drinking scotch with John Durham and that the atmosphere becomes poisonous and partisan enough that prosecutors are leaving the office. I mean, you've been on the inside of an investigation. What does it take to get people to resign in fury like that?
By the way, I think my view of Bill Barr, the reason I wasn't shocked is that I'm maybe starting at such a low point that this is confirmatory. So just to be clear.
Well, you lived a different experience
right, exactly.
than I did.
I lived through that month where there was a public letter reporting to be a summary of the Mueller report, which we internally knew was completely false,
bogus,
and just completely misleading to the American public, and having to wait for the report to come out, knowing what Bill Barr was up to, so that's sort of one piece. To resign the way that at least 2, possibly 3 people did is huge. I mean, that there has to be something that you find so sort of unpalatable in terms of ethics. That you are going to resign. And that is, in fact, what the reporting is with respect to the number 2, somebody who was very close to John Durham, Nora Dennehy, resigned, and according to the reporting, issued a formal written statement to the group about what was improper about what was going on and how they should not be issuing this sort of interim report to play politics at Bill Barr's and Donald Trump's request. And then the second was before they brought charges against a sort of Clinton-affiliated lawyer, 2 of the prosecutors said the evidence is way too thin. Yeah. And also this wouldn't have been brought against anyone else. The second part of what a prosecutor has to do, which is that even if there's the appropriate evidence, it's not the can we bring a case, it's should we bring it. And they had objections to both prongs. That is really significant. I mean, you shouldn't have that kind of dissension in the ranks. I mean, I have never experienced that, where something's happening that's that inappropriate.